Hey guys, welcome back to today's video, and in this video, I'm going to be predicting the 2024 presidential election between Trump and Biden if Joe Biden had a 10% better approval rating nationwide. So, basically, Joe Biden is currently sitting at a 38% approval rating, and I'm going to be predicting what the 2024 election would look like if things were a little bit differently. And obviously, this is hypothetical because Joe Biden, obviously sitting at 38% approval. But if you were to increase that by 10%, which is what we're doing in this video, he would be at a 48% approval instead of 38%. And keep in mind, 38% is one of the worst approvals for any sitting U.S. president in American history. It is worse than Donald Trump. So at this point in time, Joe Biden's approval rating is worse than Donald Trump's. At this point in time when Trump is in office. So Donald Trump did have a better approval rating than Joe Biden did with COVID. So if you minus COVID, Donald Trump would have been way better, even though he still already has a better approval rating than Joe Biden. But in this video, it's going to be hypothetical. If Joe Biden's approval rating was just 10% better, which that actually is significant. That is really significant. If Joe Biden's approval rating was 10% better than it is right now, things could be looking way differently. And very positive way for Joe Biden heading into the 2024 presidential election. So before we begin with the prediction, I do want to mention channel membership. So the link will be in the description or pinned in the comment section. So just scroll down. It will be down in this video. So just scroll down, or you can click the join button on my channel page. We have custom perks, custom emojis regarding the 2024 presidential election between Trump and Biden. So just to get it out of the way, it's pretty much simple. You can join today, become a member of the channel. Now that we have channel memberships out the way, let's begin with the actual video. Begin with my prediction. This is what I think the 2024 presidential election, general election map would look like if Joe Biden had a 10% increased approval rating. I think things would look way different and better for Joe Biden. I think the economy would be doing way better than it is right now if Joe Biden had a better approval rating. And considering Joe Biden got 303 electoral votes back in the 2020 election with 81 million votes, if he just did 10% better in terms of approval, I think Joe Biden is on track to actually win re-election and to defeat Donald Trump in 2024. So let's begin with the likely states. I think regardless if Joe Biden had a 10% better approval rating or not, I think Florida would still be likely for the GOP. It's pretty much a lost cause for Democrats, as well as Iowa and Ohio, I think, would all be likely for Donald Trump, regardless whether Joe Biden had a 40%, 48% approval rating, or a 38%. It doesn't matter. Those states will still be likely for the GOP because it's just lost cause for Democrats. Republicans have gerrymandered the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis has made sure that Democrats cannot win Florida in a long time from now. So with that being said, those three states I feel unlikely will remain for Republicans in the future. And then now that we have the likely states out the way for the GOP, the likely states for Joe Biden in the 2024 election, if he had a 10% better approval rating, is the state of Minnesota. Minnesota went to Biden back in 2020 by 8%, which mainly due to the fact the African-American voters had high turnout, and with Kamala Harris being his vice president, that helped him win Minnesota. So with that being said, if Joe Biden just had a little bit higher approval rating, I think Minnesota could remain likely in the likely column for Joe Biden heading into the 2024 election. And same goes for Virginia. Joe Biden won Virginia by 10 to 11 percentage points back in 2020. If he had a higher approval rating, maybe 10% more approval rating or better, I think Virginia would be likely maybe 8 to 9% for Joe Biden. I think he got a little bit lucky when he won it by double digits. I think that's a little bit of a reach. Specifically talking for 2024, I think Virginia will be likely instead of safe for Joe Biden. And another likely state for Joe Biden, I think, would be New Mexico and Colorado. Those states are pretty much lost causes for Donald Trump. I think Joe Biden has that locked under control. Whether he has low or high approval rating, doesn't matter. Joe Biden will still comfortably win those two states. And now that we have all the likely states out of the way, actually we have one more likely state for Joe Biden. That is New Hampshire. If Joe Biden's approval rating was 10% better than it is right now, I think New Hampshire would be in the likely column for Joe Biden, considering that the fact New Hampshire voters do not like a Donald Trump type of candidates. They just don't like that. They like someone like Joe Biden, who was seen as more of a moderate candidate back in 2020, which is why New Hampshire heavily supported Joe Biden. And if Joe Biden had just slightly better approval, maybe 10% better, you're looking at 48% approval rating for Joe Biden instead of 38%. So that's significant. And I think New Hampshire would likely reelect Joe Biden in 2024. And now that we actually have the likely states out of the way, moving on to the lean states. I think Nebraska's 2nd congressional district will be lean for Joe Biden. This is a district that Joe Biden won in 2020, and if he had better approval rating than he does now, he definitely will win it. And another lean state, but this time for Donald Trump, is actually Maine's 2nd congressional district. This is a district that voted for Trump in 2016 and in 2020. Even if Joe Biden had better approval rating, I could still expect Maine's 2nd congressional district, regardless, to vote for Donald Trump for a 3rd time in a row. And then going back to Joe Biden, another lean state for Joe Biden, if he just had 10% better approval rating, I think would be the state of Michigan, the Rust Belt state of Michigan. If Joe Biden had a 10% better approval rating than where he is at now, I think Michigan could be lean for him in 2024. This is a state that helped Joe Biden take back the Rust Belt and rebuild the blue wall, which Hillary Clinton thought she would, win those 3 Rust Belt states, which did not happen, but Joe Biden ended up flipping them back in Democratic control. I think regardless if Joe Biden had better approval rating or did not, I think Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, can probably carry Joe Biden to a victory. And because Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, Democrat, she's very approved of in there. And with that being said, if her being very approved of, if she can help carry Joe Biden to a victory in Michigan, I think that could very well happen, especially considering if Joe Biden, and in a hypothetical, had a 10% better approval rating. So I do think Michigan would be lean for Joe Biden. And then those are all the lean states for Joe Biden. And now the lean states for Donald Trump would be the state of Texas. If Joe Biden had 10% better approval rating nationwide, I think Texas could be a little bit more competitive, maybe by a lean margin, but it still won't go to Joe Biden. I mean, Donald Trump only won it back in 2020 by 6 percentage points. So he'll probably win it somewhere around there. But, I don't think things will get better for Trump in Texas as it is slowly trending left, even though a lot of the Hispanics are actually coming out more conservative than people may think. But that's where we're at on Texas. And now that's pretty much all the lean states for Donald Trump. Every single state remaining on the map that I have not filled out will either be tilt for Joe Biden or tilt for Donald Trump. Let's start off with the tilt states for Donald Trump. If Joe Biden had 10% better approval rating, I still think Georgia would go to Trump regardless if Joe Biden had better approval or not, because the margin in 2020 was just so close. Joe Biden only won Georgia by 0.2 percentage points, which is roughly 11,000 votes. So with that being said, even if Joe Biden had better approval, I still don't think Biden will win it because the margin was just too close. And I think Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, similar to Michigan, I think Brian Kemp can maybe carry Trump to a victory because obviously Brian Kemp overperforms Donald Trump. And obviously when it comes to Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer overperforms Joe Biden. So similar to Michigan, if the governor, which I think the governors can play a crucial role in carrying their, nominees when it comes to the general election to a victory, I think the governors actually play a crucial role. For example, Michigan, like I just mentioned earlier, I think when it comes to the governors playing a crucial role in the general election, I think Gretchen Whitmer could possibly carry Joe Biden to a victory because she's so approved. And then same thing for Georgia. Brian Kemp is so approved, so maybe he can help carry Donald Trump to a victory. And I do think that because 2020, Georgia went to Biden in 2020, it mainly due to the fact that the African-American turnout was just so high in favor of Joe Biden. Joe Biden won, I believe, 90% of the African-American voters. So with that being said, I imagine if Joe Biden had 10% better approval rating than what he has now, he would be so much approved of from African voters. But because he's so disapproved, which is not the point of this video, I don't think he would do that well with African voters. But like I mentioned, I imagine if Joe Biden had 10% better approval rating than what he has right now, I think he would be more approved of with the African American voters. So, which would make Georgia very close. But I do think Trump would edge out Joe Biden in Georgia. because I do think Joe Biden got a little bit lucky. Uh, it was a COVID year, and a lot of negative things were thrown out at Donald Trump, and people and voters wanted to change, and they just wanted to change in leadership. But now, even if Joe Biden had 10% better approval rating, I still do think Georgia would slightly vote for Donald Trump by about a percentage point, but it still would be close. And another tilt state for Donald Trump, I think if Joe Biden had 10% better approval rating, doesn't matter. I still think North Carolina would still vote for Donald Trump, but barely, maybe under a percentage point. I think it will get that close to the point where it will be decided by under a percentage point. This is a state that Donald Trump only won in 2020 by 1.6 percentage points. So considering the fact that if Joe Biden did had 10% better approval rating, North Carolina could very well flip for Joe Biden. But will it? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I still think Donald Trump would edge out Joe Biden in North Carolina, even if he had 10% better approval rating. And now, moving on to the tilt states for Joe Biden, if he had better approval rating, first is Nevada. Nevada is a state that has, in terms of future-wise, is favoring Republicans. Nevada is trending to the right. Northern Nevada is heavily Republican. The only thing that's pretty much holding Republicans back from actually flipping or winning the state of Nevada in the general election is pretty much the Las Vegas area. You take a look at all of Nevada, it's pretty much all Republican. But that one county, the Las Vegas area, is pretty much Democrat. And if Donald Trump can peel away some of the votes in the Vegas area, he very well can flip it. But considering a hypothetical in which Joe Biden had a 10% better increased approval rating than what he has now, I can imagine that Nevada would still vote for Joe Biden, because I just think, winning some of those voters in the Vegas area is just that difficult, and I don't think Trump can do it. So I do think Nevada will vote for Joe Biden in 2024. And another tilt state, I think Joe Biden will win if he does have a 10% better approval rating than what he has now, which is obviously a hypothetical. Joe Biden is extremely in the negatives, underwater. He's disapproved of by negative 17%. So, but if he had a 10% slightly improved approval rating, I do think Arizona would vote for Joe Biden again, because Arizona is a state, when we're talking future-wise, is the complete opposite of Nevada. I just mentioned Nevada in the future will be a Republican state. Meanwhile, Arizona is the polar opposite. Arizona in the future will become a Democratic state. They just voted a Democratic a senator. They voted in Mark Kelly for his last and final term. They voted a Democratic governor, which they haven't done so in a long time. So in the 2022 midterms, and obviously Carrie Lake was a terrible candidate. She was a terrible choice. And with that being said, you can see, shifts, recent trends and shifts have proven that Arizona will become a Democratic state. If it used to be a Republican state, but ever since 2016, it became a purple state. With the Trump era, it became a purple state, because Arizona is a state that does not typically like candidates that are populist. They don't like Trump. They don't like Trumpism. The Republican Party of Arizona just does not like Trumpy type candidates. They like the neocons, which is what Republicans would like to call them, like John McCain, Mitt Romney. The Republican Party of Arizona likes those type of candidates. They would stay away from Trump, and they would probably vote Romney or McCain, because as we all know, McCain won by 11%, and then Romney won by 7%, and then the margins kept decreasing in favor of Democrats. Trump only won it by 3%, and then in 2020 it finally flipped. So if you take a look closely at every election, Arizona has been getting closer and closer, and in 2020 election finally flipped for Democrats. And then we're talking about 2024, where Arizona is trending in favor of Democrats. And if Joe Biden just had 10% better approval rating, I do think Arizona would still vote for Joe Biden. So we have two more states, and those states come from the Rust Belt. I think if Joe Biden had 10% better approval rating, I think Pennsylvania would vote for Joe Biden by a lean margin of around 2%. Pennsylvania voted for Joe Biden in 2020 by 1.2%. So if Joe Biden had better approval rating, maybe by 10% increase of approval nationwide, I think Pennsylvania would vote for him by 2% in the 2024 presidential election. Because if Joe Biden had 10% better approval rating, that means the economy would be doing better, and jobs, job increase, job growth would be doing better, which when it comes to Pennsylvania, that matters a lot to voters, especially the blue-collar, hardworking class. That matters to Rust Belt voters, and if Joe Biden can win some of those voters, I definitely think he would win Pennsylvania, and same thing goes for Wisconsin. If Joe Biden had a 10% better approval rating, I think he would be favored amongst, those blue collar workers, those hard class working voters, the middle class. And they would probably turn out for Joe Biden if he just had a slightly better approve rating, which is obviously hypothetical because he is very much underwater in the negatives. So there you guys go. This is my finalized 2024 presidential election map between Trump and Biden if Joe Biden had 10% better approve rating, which let me know if you guys want more hypothetical videos like this. So 287 for Joe Biden, 251 for Donald Trump. So if you were to ask me, what I think the outcome of the 2024 election would be if Joe Biden had a 10% better approve rating, which instead of 38, it would be 48%. I would tell you that I think Joe Biden would probably get around 287 electoral votes instead of 303, and then Donald Trump would get 251 electoral votes if Joe Biden had a 10% increase of approve rating. So let me know what states you agree with, what states you disagree with, and if Joe Biden had a 10% better approve rating, let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think he would win the election, or do you think even regardless, do you think Donald Trump would still win the election if Joe Biden had a 10% better approve rating? Let me know your thoughts on the map. And one last final reminder before I end out the video is channel memberships are in the description or in the comment section pinned. So make sure you scroll down or click the join button on my channel page. We have custom perks, custom emojis, and become a member today. It's that simple.